Hey, what's up, people? Piz out here. Today I want to talk to you guys about the newly released film, The Witch, written and directed by Robert Eggers. And The Witch is about a family living in 1630s New England who have decided to move out into the middle of nowhere, and there may just be a witch living out in the woods who seeks to do them harm. And I'll leave it at that. Pretty simple plot there. But if you have heard anything about The Witch, you've surely heard the hype. This movie was a darling at the Sundance Film Festival. Critics have just been singing its praises. Stephen King called it scary as hell. The official satanic temple gave this film its seal of approval. This film is fully endorsed by Satan. Okay? Talk about hyping a horror movie. This movie is endorsed by the devil himself. And I think that's kind of where the problems, at least with the audience, start with this movie. I just watched this film in the theater, a fairly packed theater, and at the end, walking out, most people really did not like the movie. And I think that's all about not just hype, but about expectation. This movie has been sold as a horror movie, not just a horror movie, but as a soul-shaking, hardcore, true horror film. And when I left the theater, yes, I'd saw a horror film. I'd saw a film that was very intense, a movie that was at times actually uncomfortable. The movie made me uncomfortable. But really, at its core, this film is a period piece about a family being torn apart by fear of the unknown, by paranoia. And it's a slower moving kind of film. So definitely, I think a lot of people's expectations walking into The Witch is just horror movie. A witch riding a broom all over the place and people being scared and screaming and the witch killing people and so on and so forth. And then it ends, and at the very end, before we cut to black, the witch jumps out and screams. And yeah, that's not what this movie is. This movie is not a film about boo scares. This movie doesn't go for the easy scare. This movie goes for something much more deeper, something much more cerebral, something much more visceral. And I, for one, really liked that about The Witch. Now, let me just get this out of the way. First and foremost, is The Witch a new horror classic? Is it the best horror film in the past decade? No. Not in my opinion. Not in my opinion. Is it a good horror film? Is it a horror film that you should absolutely go out and watch? And is this the kind of horror film that we should want released in theaters as opposed to stuff like The Forest and Ouija and, Paranormal Activity 12 and so on and so forth? Yes, absolutely. This is a thinking person's horror film. This is a horror film for someone. You have to go in, you have to sit down, and you just sort of have to let go and let the movie take you. But again, you have to kind of keep your thinking cap on. And I really, really liked that about The Forest. The mood of the film, the atmosphere was fantastic. It was dark. It was cold. It was dreary. It was wet. I could almost smell the decrepit earth. That's how well this movie works as far as the atmosphere of the film. The performances are fantastic all around. The lead actress was great. I loved her. The guy who played the father, phenomenal performance. The young man who played the brother in the film, wow, really, really strong performance. He looked like he was maybe 15 at the most, and really, really strong performance. And some of the stuff that they asked him to do in this film, I was really kind of wowed by in his performance, particularly in one scene, and I won't give anything away, but if you watch the film, you'll know what I'm talking about. Just so intense and uncomfortable. And like I said, uncomfortable. This movie made me uncomfortable. This movie didn't necessarily scare me. It didn't necessarily horrify me, but it made me uncomfortable. And I don't remember the last horror film that's really made me uncomfortable. The movie explores all sorts of taboos, religious taboos. There's even, some incestuous stuff going on there. This is a movie that really just sort of goes for the throat. And again, I appreciated that as well. The dialogue in the film, it's very much, thee and thou, and you know what I mean? It's very period. And that, I think, also really threw off some people. I heard people in the theater kind of chuckling at some of the dialogue. Again, expectations. They weren't expecting a period piece. Let me guide thee. How does thou, that kind of dialogue. And at times it was difficult to follow the dialogue because the accents are kind of thick and because they're talking in that kind of, they're talking that way. It does make the dialogue a little difficult to follow at times. But follow it, you should. Really at the core of the movie, like I said, it's about a family in turmoil and a family just being ripped apart at the seams by fear of the unknown, by paranoia. It's not so much a film about a witch. It's a film about, walking out. For me, the movie was really about, evil. You can, this family, they went into the middle of nowhere. They left this village because they had differing views on religion, so they went out into the middle of nowhere to sort of do their own thing, to worship how they want to worship. And what I took from it was you can go, wherever you hide, wherever you are, evil is no more than an arm's length away. And if you either choose willfully to go in the path of evil, or if you allow evil to destroy you mentally or physically or emotionally, then, evil is won. That's the kind of film that I think The Witch is. It's not about the boo scare. It's not about blood and gore. It's really a far more thought-provoking kind of film. And like I said, I've got to take my hat off to it because, it made me uncomfortable. There were at least a couple of sequences in the film where I just felt uncomfortable. There are a number of very intense moments in the film, but it is kind of a slow build. I never felt bored watching it. Probably the movie starts out really strong. Then there's a period where you're just sort of with the family. And then it switches gears into being a little bit more intense. But I didn't mind that. I saw a lot of people in the theater sort of shifting in their seats, checking their phones, clearly a little bored. I was never bored by the movie. Again, expectations. Again, hype. This movie was hyped as this insane, intense horror film. And on one level it is, on one level it isn't. And also I think, you can, what's a horror movie to you? A lot of the people in that theater with me are probably the people who, they were expecting Ouija. They were expecting boo scares every 5 seconds and, that kind of horror. And they were let down. If that's the kind of horror that you're into, The Witch isn't for you. Just put it that way. As I said, go watch The Witch. I recommend it. Go, support it. This is the kind of horror films that we need theatrically. These are the kinds of horror films that studios should be making and releasing in theaters. Serious horror films for, serious horror fans who enjoy things like mood and atmosphere and like to have, like to watch thought-provoking films that they can discuss afterwards and really explore in depth. And that's what kind of film The Witch is. Again, I recommend it. Go check it out. I liked it quite a bit. not the next huge horror classic, not the best horror film of the past 5 years, 10 years, what have you, but certainly one I think you should go out and watch. If you've seen The Witch, please let me know what you think of it in the comments section below. If you've not seen The Witch, go check it out. Come back. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments section below. Thanks so much for watching. Take care, and until next time,